Welcome to the next level of manifesting, guys. We are back with The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. This is chapter 4, Desire. Okay, so I want to give my grandfather's testimonial, the one that was published in The Law and the Promise, as an example for the first part of this chapter, because it is very important to understand that things are going to happen. When you're manifesting things in your life, you start to manifest things in your life, it's going to appear to the unenlightened person that it was some outer cause or coincidence, or you're just lucky, or it had to happen that way. You're going to hear these things, but that's not the cause. The cause was your concept of self while you were manifesting. Your assumptions is what created that. It changed your experience of consciousness where you are, but you're always going to have those people playing their parts that are going to tell you that it was outer cause or coincidence, because there has to be somewhat of a logical sequence of events that have to lead up to your manifestation. That's why Neville Goddard goes into the naturalness of it, like the natural state that you have to be in order to receive something, for that door to open. There has to be like a logical sequence that has to unfold most of the time, but not all the time. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into it. The changes which take place in your life as a result of your changed concept of yourself or the things that you're manifesting always appear to the unenlightened to be the result not of a change of your consciousness or your own imagination creates reality, but of chance, outer cause, or coincidence. However, the only fate governing your life is the fate determined by your own concept of self, your own assumptions. For an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into a fact, okay? And there will be a somewhat of a natural sequence of events that will take place in order for that to harden into a fact, but that will happen, and it will appear to the unenlightened person that it was caused by some coincidence or something, of chance, or you got lucky, or it was an outer cause, but really it was your change of concept of self. Just like my grandfather's testimony in The Law and the Promise, where he had the smallest Arthur Murray dance studio in the world. It was at the bottom of the list, the very bottom of the list. And then my grandfather's friend, or one of his dance instructors that worked for him at the studio, he was like, okay, so I want to believe what you're saying, that imagination creates reality, but I want you to show me something that you can do that'll prove it to me. And my grandfather came up with something. He accepted the challenge. And then he created a scene with Arthur Murray congratulating him, and they were on the set, and there was a big audience, and he created a microphone, and then Arthur Murray came and sat next to him, and the Reno studio was the talk of the convention. It was on the top of the list. It was on the bottom of the list, but then it went to the top of the list, and Tony said, "This is impossible. It cannot happen. The Reno studio will never be the talk of the convention in Las Vegas. That will never happen." So my grandfather said, "Well, when it does happen, will you believe?" And he says, "Yes, of course, but it's stupid. It's not going to happen." So my grandfather did it, and then it happened. And then Tony still said that it happened by chance or outer cause or coincidence, or you're just the smartest man I've ever met. That's what it does when you imagine something as reality, as if it's happening right now. You will be transformed into that person that can accomplish that. That's why Tony said to my grandfather, "You're probably the smartest man that I've ever met in my entire life." And that's something that had to happen, that manifested into the experience of that consciousness in my grandfather's life, that made him the smartest man in order to get that. But whatever needs to happen in order for your manifestation to occur, if you land it correctly, it's going to happen. You're going to be changed into a completely transformed into a different person that's going to be campaigning. You're going to be working night and day. You're going to be doing this, but it's not always work. Sometimes it'll just come to you. You'll win something, or something will happen. The money will just fall, into your lap, but not always working hard to get it. But you get my point. So whatever you imagine, whatever it may be something just crazy, far-fetched. It doesn't matter. If you can create the scene and make it real in your imagination and change your concept of self. You can even do it through affirmations, whether you're falling asleep with different meditations that are programming you in that suggestive time when you're falling asleep and programming you with a new concept of self. You're going to become that person that someone's going to say, "That's the smartest person I ever met." You're going to be programmed with that program, with that person that can now get those things. That's how it works, but it'll seem like from the unenlightened person or the non-believer, somebody that just is an automaton or just a sleepwalker, I like to put it. They're just sleepwalking their life away, not creating not consciously creating anything, just unconsciously assuming, because we're always assuming something. There's no time in your life ever that you are not making assumptions. So it's time to take control, conscious control of your assumptions rather than unconscious control of your assumptions, which all is rooted from your concept of self. That's why it's so important. That's why Neville Goddard goes over this so well in The Power of Awareness, is your concept of self is where it all starts. That's the foundation. And then everything else is kind of dovetails out of there. It's kind of created within or comes out of your concept of self. And that's your personality. And that's what is based on your assumptions, the things you consent to and believe to be true in your life, and your actions and your outer actions, from your inner state are going to create outer actions in your life. All right, so let's move on to the next part here. Okay, so the ideal you seek and hope to attain will not manifest itself, will not be realized by you until you have imagined that you are already that ideal. All right, so imagining this. I was actually just listening to a podcast with Rob Diedrich, and he was actually talking about how he visualizes and uses feeling, and he understands that feeling is the secret. And he actually visualized everything with all of his businesses, everything that he's done, even with his TV shows and his professional skateboarding career, everything. He was always visualizing and feeling that end state, and he does it constantly throughout the day. And all successful people, all successful and rich people in the world, in the past, present, or future, all have a concept of self that is rich, successful, and wealthy. It is all the same. It all stems from that concept of self, because you don't get what you want in life. You get who you are in life. And when your concept of self is successful, and that is who you are, that is your present being, then you will also be successful at this. And we're going to go into these practices where we can actually going to start changing that to where you can actually take control of your concept of self. And you can also do that by visualizing and affirming right now and changing your concept of self, make this radical psychological change within yourself. And you can move yourself into this new level of manifesting great things into your life. And I like the way Neville Goddard says this here. It's so true. There is no escape for you except by a radical psychological transformation of yourself, except by your assumption of the feeling of your wish fulfilled. And that's when you can assume the feeling, if you can obtain the feeling of your wish fulfilled as if it's already happened, if you already have it, you don't no longer want it, you don't want it anymore, you do not want it, and that you now have it, and that's your present concept of self, then that changes your concept of self. Because as we just went over, you don't get what you want in life, you get who you are. And when you can assume a feeling of your wish fulfilled and actually feel that, and actually create the scene and really feel it as if your wish has already been fulfilled, then you've changed your concept of self and you will have it. Okay, so therefore, I love this part. I'm going to give you some examples here. Make results or accomplishments the crucial test of your ability to use your imagination. So I go over this a lot with different people that I coach. And when they come to me and they say, oh, I'm trying to manifest this, I'm trying to manifest $100 million into my life tomorrow. And I'll say, but what have you manifested? Like, what have you visualized really and really cemented or created the belief systems of what you consent to be true in your world? And they'll tell me that, well, nothing really, I've done, have good relationships in this, but I just, I haven't really created anything that I can recall. And I said, well, build it up. Start building it up. Start with 10,000. Start with 100,000. Start with, a couple 100,000, something like that. If you need to slowly build your concept of self to start believing that you're, like what he says here, your accomplishments of using your imagination is the crucial test of your ability to create more at that point. So even if you're creating something small, even like parking spaces or getting a phone call, visualize it or affirm something, repeat it over and over, or write it down and start using that on a daily basis. Start doing smaller things. And when it starts coming true, when you always get this parking spot, you'd be like, I'm going to get this parking spot. I'm going to run this test. I'm going to run this crucial test to see my ability to use my imagination. So I want this specific parking spot. Okay. So you do that on multiple days. And when it works, you're going to start cementing or building a faculty of beliefs within you that your imagination creates reality. And then you'll have more success as you slowly start building that up. And I do understand that there's going to be other coaches out there or other people that are going to be like, oh no, just shoot for 100 billion in a half an hour or something like that. Sometimes you have to build these these belief systems of what you consent to be true. That way you can develop the naturalness of it. Because once you start seeing your manifestations start actually being created in your 3D world, and you realize that you're the one that's doing it, then that's what builds that faculty. Then you're like, okay, now I can do this. Now I'm going to put in the work. Now I'm actually, because I know that I believe that I can do it. So now I'm going to put in the work and start really visualizing and feeling my wish fulfilled. And it kind of goes to like, they want to tell you, oh, you want to create 300 billion in a half an hour. Okay. Or you want to fly you want to fly like Superman. These some of these things are just really far-fetched. You have to start with something. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can't just say, okay, yeah, I'm going to imagine flying off this building, and right before I hit the ground, I'm going to come up and fly like Superman. I mean, there is another parallel reality where people do fly, but we are not there in this reality. And for you to transfer there, you have to develop in increments. Okay, so start building yourself up, not necessarily where it has to be, where you're still living in poverty or something like that. You can slowly develop yourself, but start building your new concept of self to where you actually believe that your imagination creates reality, and then jump from like A, B to X, Y, Z. You want to jump like that. So start creating something that way you build somewhat of a faculty of beliefs, within you. That way you really start seeing your manifestations start coming true. Then you can work on, be like, well, I can do anything, and then start counting $100 bills before you go to sleep. Start creating more and more as you go. And before you know it, you're going to be very, very successful, and you're going to be able to know that you can create anything that you want in your life. All right, guys, so everything depends on your attitude towards yourself. That which you will not affirm as true of yourself can never be realized by you, for that attitude alone is the necessary condition by which you realize your goal. All transformation is based upon suggestion, and this can work only where you lay yourself completely open to an influence. You must, you can use this at night. Like laying yourself open to an influence is listening to a meditation track, whether it's affirmations or whether you're visualizing yourself or whether you're scripting before you go to sleep. You're laying yourself open to suggestion, an influence that is programming your subconscious mind in that receptive state. You can also use affirmations throughout the day, and you're developing, because the subconscious mind is always on the move. It's always watching. So it's always absorbing your feeling states. But the most receptive time is right as you pass from consciousness into your subconscious lover when you go to sleep. Okay, so it's all based on this completely open to an influence. You must abandon yourself to your ideal as a woman abandons herself for love. For complete abandonment of self is the way to union with your ideal. You must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. You must imagine that you are already experiencing what you desire. And a lot of these affirmations, that's what they'll do. As you're falling asleep with them, this is exactly what will happen. The affirmations are being spoken to you and being impressed by an outside influence in your mind as you're drifting from consciousness to the subconscious. So you're assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled until basically your mind starts imagining on its own, because these words are being spoken to you as you're drifting, and then the images are popping up in your mind. So you're creating a vividness of reality as you're going to sleep from the affirmations from your hearing. You're hearing this being spoken to you. So these assumptions are being impregnated into the subconscious mind from your present concept of self, which will ultimately change your version of yourself on your own. You'll start waking up in the morning with new ideas. You'll start being happier. Maybe you may even in some instances have more obstacles in your life that you have to conquer in order to be the new version of yourself that you need to be in order to be the millionaire. So there's a lot of different ways that this can go, but you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. You must imagine that you are already experiencing what you desire, and your mind does this on its own as you're listening to these affirmations. That is, you must assume the feeling of the fulfillment of your desire until you are possessed by it. And this feeling crowds all other ideas out of your consciousness, which what these meditations will do as you're falling asleep, being hypnotized by this new feeling state. And it's going to crowd out all the other ideas in your mind. And then you will be impressing and impregnating the subconscious mind with a new version of yourself. Then you'll wake up with these new ideas. All right, so... And the man who is not prepared for the conscious plunge into the assumption of the wish fulfilled in the faith that it is the only way to the realization of his dream, is not yet ready to live consciously by the law of assumption, although there is no doubt that he does live by the law of assumption unconsciously. Everyone lives by the law of assumption, whether you're using it consciously or unconsciously. You can't live your life without assuming something. That's what creates that's what outpictures the world, because this world, this hologram that you see, is not real. It doesn't exist on its own. It's existing through your assumptions of it and your observations during your assumptions. All right, so, but for you who accept this principle and are ready to live by consciously assuming that your wish is already fulfilled, the adventure of life begins. And you got to remember, they didn't have, back in the day when Neville Goddard did this, they didn't have meditations you could fall asleep to with affirmations and things being spoken to you and actually assisting your visualizations. Like some of the ones that I talk to you, or I actually walk you through the visualization, like creating the $3 million while you sleep. I actually walk you through the visualization, and then I have you do it with the sleep music afterwards. So you have like a perfect, you're building you up, and I'm walking you through the visualization, and then you start doing it yourself, and then you can start creating the scenes and vividly yourself, and then fall asleep with that feeling, which is really, really awesome. I'll post that playlist at the end here so you guys know where it's at. I've got like 20 or 30 different meditations that you can choose from, all different kinds. But okay, so to reach a higher level of being, you must assume a higher concept of yourself. If you will not imagine yourself as other than what you are, then you remain as you are. For if ye believe not that I am he, ye shall die in your sins. John 8:24. If you do not believe that you are he, the person you want to be, then you remain as you are. Through the faithful, systematic cultivation of the feeling of the wish fulfilled, desire becomes the promise of its own fulfillment. The assumption of the feeling of the wish fulfilled makes the future dream a present fact. All right, guys, so what I'm suggesting that you all do is fall asleep with my meditations. They are absolutely free. I'm not asking for anything. I don't want your emails. You don't have to sign up for anything. I'm going to put the playlist up right here. You guys will see it. Fall asleep. If you don't have time during the day to visualize or do all your affirmations out loud, at the very least, fall asleep with these meditations. Let them play in the background. Allow them to impress you with a new concept of yourself, and we'll get into further exercises later, but continue to use these. They're absolutely free. I didn't want anything from you. You don't have to give me your emails. You don't have to do this. You don't have to sign up for this. You have to do none of that. They're absolutely free. The playlist is absolutely free. Check those out. Listen to them as you fall asleep. I love you guys, and I will see you guys in the next video.